Welcome to this episode of Hampton Roads Business Live. My name is Rory Graham, and I'm your host. And today we have the pleasure of having with us Chris Clayton from the Clayton Hypnosis Clinic.
Thank you very much.
Welcome here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I've been looking forward to this because I just find hypnosis to be a fascinating topic.
I agree
just
completely.
so unusual.
Yeah.
You know, I've never actually had a chance to talk to a hypnotist.
Okay.
So that's good.
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward
Why don't
to
you
it.
start by giving us an overview of what your clinic does, and then we can get into some particulars on.
Essentially, we use hypnosis to help people meet their goals. And goals are generally either feelings that people have they don't want to have, whether it's anxiety or depression, or sometimes things that they do want to have, like motivation to work out, or
I could use that.
Yeah, I think everyone could, or behaviors. Like, for example, there's behaviors that you don't want to have that you habitually do, or behaviors that you want to have more of. So essentially, my job is to use hypnosis to help people change their automatic patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Okay, and can you explain what is hypnosis?
Hypnosis is essentially a state in between being asleep and being awake. And in that, there's a window in between being asleep and being awake. And the hypnotherapist is able to use that window to directly access your unconscious. Your unconscious is just the part of your brain that is responsible for setting up these programs that are related to thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So if you have something that you automatically do that you don't want to do, or if you have something that you would like to automatically think, feel, or do, the hypnotherapist is able to help you into that state and kind of reprogram your unconscious to give you those automatic programs.
Okay, so if you're using hypnosis, let's say you're depressed,
Mm-hmm.
is using hypnosis to treat depression or to work with someone who's depressed, is that hypnotherapy?
Yeah, it's absolutely hypnotherapy. Depression is not a problem. Depression is a symptom. If you have anxiety, like let's just say that your brain is overstressed. It's just like a machine being overstressed. If you took a car and you just started driving it, let's just say you had unlimited gasoline and you just started driving it, eventually something would break. It might be a tire, it might be the alternator, it might be anything. You don't know. It's the same thing with anxiety. If you have too much anxiety and you don't give your brain a chance to recuperate, your brain will start having symptoms. One of those possible symptoms is depression. That's essentially your brain forcing you to shut down so it can repair itself for a little while. And so if I was treating depression, someone who was diagnosed with depression, the first thing we would look at is what's creating all the anxiety. If you ask someone who's depressed, do you have anxiety? They're never going to say, no, I'm completely relaxed, I just have depression. You will never hear that ever.
Okay.
So the first thing we do with depression specifically is look to see how they are creating their own anxiety, and we use the hypnosis to get that under control.
Okay. All right. So why did you choose the specialty of hypnotherapy?
Well, I've been involved with hypnotherapy for my entire life, but I really think that the main reason that I decided to go into clinical hypnotherapy, I remember, and I've been asked the question 100 times and I've given 100 different answers, but the one thing that really stands out to me is I was doing master's work in counseling, and I remember asking my professor, how do you solve that problem? And he said, we don't try to solve problems here. We just help people cope with problems. And then 1,000 red flags that had been in the back of my mind all came to the surface, and I realized in traditional counseling and psychology, they are not trying to solve the problem. They are just trying to help you cope with the problem for the rest of your life. Hypnosis is the only branch of counseling or psychology that actually wants to solve the problem so that the problem isn't there anymore. And that's the main thing that appealed to me.
Okay, all right, good answer.
Thank you.
So what are the common problems that you treat with hypnotherapy? I know you mentioned anxiety, you mentioned depression. Are there others?
Yeah, there are basically 3 categories of problems that can be treated with hypnotherapy. There are cognitive issues such as test taking and memory. There's emotional issues like anxiety and depression, and there are behavioral issues such as tobacco addiction and weight loss, for example. So everything is in those three basic categories.
All right, so if someone's trying to quit smoking, you can help with that. And
yeah, absolutely. One thing that people are starting to realize is that nicotine addiction is largely psychological. The actual physical effects of withdrawal are very slight. It only lasts about 5 days, and it has the magnitude of a mild cold. And it's self-correcting. If you're having withdrawal, all you have to do is nothing, and the problem solves itself. Wouldn't that be great if all of our problems were like that? Oh, my alternator's acting up. I'll just ignore it for 5 days, and it'll solve itself.
I do that, but
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
That is essentially what you're dealing with withdrawal. The reason that people have such a miserable time trying to quit smoking is that they tell their brain that cigarettes are this precious substance they need to get through the day, to relax, to have stimulation when they're bored. And really, cigarettes don't do any of those things very well. What the hypnotherapist does is go into the unconscious mind and help reprogram those automatic responses so that cigarettes are not a precious substance, which they're not. They're worthless. They're a poisonous, addictive, nothing. And being able to switch that over to something that's healthy and constructive, that actually provides that comfort, the stimulation in a healthy and constructive way. So by the time you're done, you perceive cigarettes as no more important than a piece of chalk lying on the table.
Now, how does that kind of a treatment work with anxiety, though?
Well, it's a little different with anxiety. It's around the same core of changing how you think, feel, and behave.
Okay.
Anxiety is like, let's say, for example, there's some people who are afraid of dogs. You're not afraid of dogs, right?
No.
I'm not afraid of dogs. So when you or I think about a dog, we might imagine playing with the dog licking our hand, feeding the dog, normal dog things. But when someone who's afraid of dogs thinks about dogs, they think about that time they were 9 years old and they were bit by a dog. They think about how dogs could attack you at any point in time. If I thought about that when I thought about dogs, I'd be afraid of dogs too. So the important lesson is there's nothing wrong with that person. They are just doing something in their head that is creating that fear.
And that could have been built into them years and years and years.
Right, exactly.
And they don't even realize they're doing it.
Right, and they don't. They never realize that.
Right.
None of us ever realize these unconscious things that we're doing. So we use the hypnosis to go in and kind of reprogram how they perceive dogs. In this case, it could be dogs, it could be driving, it could be public speaking, it could be relationships, spiders, anything. Here, I'll give you an example. When someone who is not afraid of spiders thinks about spiders, they think about spiders the same way that you think about dogs. They might think about a spider just walking along, minding its own business. But when someone who's afraid of spiders thinks about spiders, they might imagine the spider looking at them, maybe running up to them, maybe biting them in their sleep. And
well, I could trace back where I had my problem because I had a scare with black widows when I was young, probably 7 or so, and from that point on, it just changed that for me. And I'm not terrified of them, I just avoid it.
Right, and the point is there was nothing wrong with your brain. If anyone thought what you thought whenever you think of spiders, that person would also be afraid of spiders. Yeah. So the point is, that can be changed. You can go in, normalize how you think about spiders so they're just a normal thing on the ground, just in the same way, or maybe a similar way that you think of dogs or any other kind of animal.
I don't think I'll ever think about him as a dog. Okay, that's good. I understand the point, though. All right, now here's one that there's also, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have this issue, is weight loss.
Yep, absolutely.
That's a big topic.
Yeah.
Especially this time of year, first of the year, everybody's on a diet or changing or resolution or something.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
You see that a lot?
Yeah, and that's one of the most common things that I work with. There's basically 4 things that hypnosis can do for someone losing weight or trying to lose weight. Number 1 is it can help you to eat only when you're hungry and not when you're bored or stressed or need stimulation or need comfort or anything. Because again, food doesn't do that well. There are healthier and more effective ways to deal with those. So breaking that habit and only eating when you're hungry is the first thing. The second thing that hypnosis can do is help it so that you crave and like foods that are healthy rather than junk foods empty calories, things that are unhealthy. The third thing is stopping when you're no longer hungry, as opposed to most people who are overweight will tend to eat on autopilot. They'll start eating and they'll rely on external cues to know when to stop eating, such as when the plate is clean, when everyone else is done, etc. Hypnosis can make it so that as soon as you're no longer hungry, it turns off the desire to eat. And most people end up eating about 1/2 to 1/3 of the amount they were eating before after going through that change. And then the fourth thing is hypnosis can give you motivation to exercise, so you look forward to exercise, so that it's kind of like brushing your teeth in the sense that if you missed it, you would actually want to make up for it the next day. So all those things are just your perception of eating and exercise. It has nothing to do with the food or the exercise itself. It has only to do with how you perceive those things.
That's very interesting. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, now I know some people that are looking at this, they've heard all this great medical stuff with smoking, anxiety, depression, weight loss, and all that. And then they go on YouTube and they see these hypnotists that are, stage hypnotists. Okay, that's something just totally different. You're obviously not that.
Yes, it is completely different.
Right.
It's kind of a double-edged sword because it does raise awareness of hypnosis, but it also gives people a lot of false ideas about what hypnosis is. The bottom line is that stage hypnotists are not doing hypnosis. It's not real hypnosis. Stage hypnotists are much more akin to stage magicians than they are to clinical hypnotherapists. So the question might be, well then why do people do the things they're told to do? And there's essentially two primary group dynamics that every stage hypnotist use. Number one, if you ever watch a stage show, you'll notice they bring up a lot of people, like 20 or 30 people, and they tell them to do something, and whoever doesn't do it gets sat back down. So you're immediately, number one, you're filtering for people who are obedient, and number two, you're sending the message that if you don't do what I tell you to do, you're going to get sat back down. So you end up with this small group of people that you already know are obedient. And then the second thing is something called abstract conditioning. If you tell someone to do a little thing and they do it, they're more likely to do a medium-sized thing and then a large thing. So then by the end of the show, people are singing like Elvis, quacking like a duck, and doing all kinds of things, and that's all the audience remembers.
Which I understand you're going to do with our director here after. I'm just teasing. Okay. All right. So another question that you hear, and actually another answer because we talked beforehand, but can anyone be hypnotized?
Yes, anyone. Not only can anyone be hypnotized, everyone is hypnotized every single day. Whenever you wake up in the morning and you're in that in-between state between being asleep and being awake, that is hypnosis. Hypnosis is not some mystical state outside of the sleep-wake scale. It's just a part in between. Whenever you're going to sleep and you're not quite asleep yet, but you're half asleep, you go through hypnosis. Wow. So not only can everyone be hypnotized, everyone is hypnotized every single day. My job as a hypnotherapist is to help the person reach that state and stay there long enough to make these kind of changes.
Okay. All right. This is not a question on my list initially, but for business people, do you help business people?
Yeah, I help business people all the time. Probably
with sales?
With sales, usually, yeah, and I certainly could work with sales.
Well, that's kind of what I meant. I mean, do you help them with their business to get, things that they should be doing in their business they might have a hard time with, cold calling or?
Right, yeah, the number one thing is either cold calling or talking to groups. So anyone who has any kind of anxiety about public speaking or speaking to groups or even speaking one-on-one with someone, hypnosis can definitely help with that. And then the second most common thing is creating a business plan. So for example, if they want to, I have a client who likes sewing, for example, and she wants to create designs, and but she doesn't know how to do that. So we can start from the bottom and work all the way up every step that's needed to build that into a successful business.
Okay, well that's interesting because we have a lot of business people that look at this and I talk to a lot of them, so it'd be very useful. Okay, so now we're going to get into something called NLP. Can you explain what NLP is?
Sure.
Because I think that's really confusing. People have heard the term, but not quite clear
okay.
what it is.
It doesn't need to be confusing at all.
Okay.
NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and at its core, and there's a lot of different offshoots of NLP, but at its core, NLP is about how your thoughts affect your feelings, which in turn affect your behaviors. Kind of what we were talking about before with how someone might think about dogs will affect how they feel about dogs. So the core of NLP is about how you are currently creating your own problem with your thinking, which is great. It's always great when you find out you're creating your own problem, because that means you have control over it. So how are you creating your own problem with your thinking, and what is a better blueprint for thinking that will lead to more effective or resourceful feelings, and in turn more effective behaviors?
So what hypnosis does is goes in to the subconscious, I guess it's subconscious, and installs or helps create that new blueprint.
Right, exactly. So the NLP is
I'm not intelligent. You just told me that before we went on. I get it though, because I didn't understand exactly how the two related.
Right.
But I do now. So.
Yeah. NLP is for figuring out what the problem is and creating a solution. Hypnosis is for installing the solution.
Right, installing the solution. Okay, that
Yep,
makes
they
a
work
lot of
together
sense.
perfectly.
All right, well, you're located in Virginia Beach, are you?
Yes.
In Virginia Beach, okay, and you've been doing this 16 years, I guess?
It'll be 16 years in a couple days.
All right, well, is there anything I haven't mentioned that you wanted to mention? Did I leave anything out?
There's 1,000 things we could potentially talk about, but I think we hit all the major things.
All the major things. Okay, well, if you have a need, it could be smoking, could be weight loss, could be wanting to exercise, it could be anxiety, depression, or if you have some other need that you would like to explore this possibility, then you can contact Chris at the Clayton Hypnosis Clinic, and his contact information is at the end of this video, and it's also at the bottom of this page. And I'm sure he can help you out. It's a fascinating field, and he certainly is an expert in it. So I thank you very much for coming in and being a part of it. I found this to be a very enlightening interview. I really enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed it as well.